Everyone has a bright light inside of them that deserves to be seen by the world. That's why it's time to shine the light on the extraordinary who are accomplishing phenomenal things. This is the Shine Out Loud Show with Lillian Ogden.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are. Yes, it's another episode of the Shine Out Loud Show with me, Lillian Ogden. Now, I have the incredible Ronke Lawal. Now, some of you know her as the Twitter queen, sharing her stories, sharing her commentary. Some of you know her by that irrepressible laughter, but others who know her as the founder and creator of Ariatu PR and Comms. She is the woman that actually helps companies of the BME background get visibility. She helps creative entrepreneurs from our community get visibility who are often overlooked. So join me and welcome again, because she's been on the show before, Miss Ronke Lawal. Ronke, hi.
Hi. Thank you for having me back. Wow, what a journey. And thank you for what a great introduction. But thank you for inviting me back. And well done on all that you've done and all that you've created with the Shine Out Loud show. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Oh, I love having you back because I've been waiting for an opportunity to have you back. We've journeyed together. I still remember that when I had you live in studio, and it was a great interview, but we had some technical issues that we couldn't solve, and we were huddled together because we were cold.
Yes.
There was not enough tea to save how cold we were, but we were all also grateful for the beautiful space that we were in. But we've journeyed together. So we have. So thank you. And I keep saying to anybody who will listen, if you are starting a podcast, you need to have people in PR on your side, simply because you need people who will give you that lifeline of incredible guests, so you don't have to work too hard to find them, because sometimes you're just not in your radar. I can count how many people that weren't in my radar till you put them in front of me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and what I've loved about seeing that is, and I love to use the word journey, I think is the key word perhaps for the whole of this conversation, but I love the fact that even the guests that I've introduced who've been, whether they're current clients or former clients, you've stayed connected with them. You're not just using them for content, quote unquote. You've managed to maintain some great relationships, and I love that. I really love that about you, and I love that about what you've created.
Thank you. Because your clients are amazing. Who the hell would want to not know them? Who the hell will not want to stay in contact with them? And I'm so thrilled when I get to talk about, oh, by the way, the reason why we can use our cell phone now when we drive through a tunnel is because of Nikki Falayan. How do I know this? Because I had her on my show.
That's brilliant. I love it. Yeah, you've been ride or die. You've been very consistent. And I think we'll touch on this perhaps in our conversation, but
yeah,
you've asked the question in terms of why would you not want to have these kind of relationships with these specific kinds of clients or entrepreneurs. But what we find, especially with Black entrepreneurs in the UK, and I'm sure it's relatively to some other nations, but in the UK, mainstream media doesn't always give platforms to these voices. Exactly. And that's why I'm so passionate. And that's why I'm also so grateful for, platforms like yours that give space for these conversations with, whether it's Black entrepreneurs, Black business owners, just give space, or Black creatives, just to give space to have these important conversations, because they don't always have these conversations until it's trendy.
Until Black Lives Matter, and then everybody wants to talk to you. You're like,
well, and because Black lives have always mattered. And isn't it fascinating that we're having this civil rights and social justice conversation in the midst of a pandemic? But when, we've been fighting this good fight for so long, and, Black lives, it will never be a trend. And that's point blank period. Like, it will never be a trend. And this is why I'm always going to value your space, because you didn't just see it as you never saw Black lives as a trend. You saw it, you've always seen it as something, for your media platform, as very real.
It cannot be a trend, because we exist in this space. Not only that, the fact of the matter is, and outside of this platform started because of a conversation about mainstream media, and I was tired. I was tired of saying, well, you know what, mainstream media is X, Y, and Z. And I was like, well, my cell phone has the capacity to curate media. I have the capacity to actually share content. So why don't I share content that spurs me? If I want to see more amazing women of color doing things, then hey ho, I talk to the amazing women of color. If I want to see men of color doing them, I talk to them and I find out. And for me, when you talk about me keeping that relationship going, because I am so proud of their successes. I am so proud to actually say, listen, I've had this person on my show. I've had this person talk to this person. There's somebody I interviewed recently, and her name is Jane Egehan. And this woman is my new favorite crush outside of you. No, seriously, she grew up in a Jegunle. She came from, you know, when people talk about slums and ghettos, and us who are of Nigerian background would go, your slum, our slum, if you kind of want to weigh them up, there's a different quality. And so she came from that to now leading industries, and she's leading in a male-dominated industry, and she's doing so much work to actually create systems to support other women that look like her. And I'm like, for me, that's powerful, and we need to have more of those conversations, because if we don't own the narrative, somebody else is going to tell whatever they feel like about us.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely.
And so we jumped straight into this, but let's jump back, because there's some people that may not know you, and have you been living under a rock? Because if you don't know Ronke, I know someone that describes you as the Puffy of PR. I'm like,
wow. Well, hopefully I'm wow. I haven't got Puffy money though. So anybody listening to me, I don't have Puffy money. But if I had Puffy money, I'd be paying people fairly. So to be fair, you know, when I do get Puffy money, we're all gonna eat. Don't worry.
Exactly. and so, you know, for those who don't know you, you're the founder of Ariatu PR and Communications. So what you founded in 2004, what was the pivotal moment that made you go, I'm going to step out on my own?
So I founded my business. I was relatively naive in the sense of I was in my early 20s. So I'd been working as a manager for a fitness company. So I was doing finance and personnel administration for this fitness company for a couple of years. It was a good job. It was a great title, manager, nice amount of money. And at the time I was still living at home, so you could keep quite a lot of that money for my savings so that I could save towards, you know, buying my own property. But what I found was, even before I got that particular job, I had followed the path that society tells you to follow, right? So you know, you work hard and you get your grades, and then you're going to get the best job possible. And I wasn't getting those graduate jobs that I thought I was going to get like that. When I finally got the job that I got, it was a good job. It wasn't a graduate position. It was a normal, you know, a normal day to day. And it was, to be fair and to be honest, it was a job that was almost, and I don't want to sound, I'm going to be diplomatic. It was almost older than me, if that makes sense, because it was a lot of responsibility. And I was still like 22, 23. So, you know, head in, just get on with it. And then I realized I wasn't fully satisfied. Like there was something in me, in my spirit, that was just compelling me to say, look, go, like, you know, start a business, do something. Because even from a young age, I'd always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I don't know what that something was, but I wanted to do something. So I thought, look, I've saved some money. I'm going to start my business. My first client was a friend who was starting a beauty business. So I helped her with her business plan and things. And my business at the time looks different from what it looks like now. My business at the time was very much marketing, business development, so some PR as well as some kind of overarching consultancy, or what I thought was consultancy, and even some administration. It was administration as well. It was a lot of things, but it was like I was trying to create this management services business model. And again, it was an entrepreneurial idea, right? So created it out of my own idea, my own passion. And it took a few years actually, Lillian, to rebrand and go back to purpose. So the voice that was whispering to me to leave my job, that was compelling me to say, oh, start something. I think if I spent a little bit more time and meditating on that voice, I think I would have gone in a slightly different direction, and I probably would have started specifically in PR and communication sooner, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
I almost had to learn. I kind of listened to the voice that said, you can't be in this job anymore, start a business. But I wasn't really listening and taking the time to think, okay, what is it? I was trying to do too much too quickly, and it was very noisy. And then over time with experience and with, challenges, financial challenges and just life challenges, I eventually came to Ariatu PR as it is. And it's just been, it's been a journey. And I say I was naive because I think the naivety that I'm calling naivety is just me not listening to that spiritual voice. And I'm sure if your listeners are used to listening to your podcast, they'll know that what I'm saying, because you're on that wavelength, right?
It's that voice that says, do something. You're like, yes, run out and you're like, wait, sorry. Could you tell me again, what was it I was supposed to do? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. Okay, let's go back to the starting board. Yeah. Exactly. I know that voice. We know that voice well, because you wake up in the morning and it's pushing and it's feet, and you're like, you get excited, like, and then
and I just followed that without really. I mean, I took into consideration what it took to start the business. So, I studied international business at school. I know what it is. I know business. I knew about the technical side of a business, right? Yes. I don't necessarily know the other side of running a business. And I think, especially as a Black Nigerian, British woman in this country, there's challenges that I wasn't even ready for. I think I was following on this kind of motivational, let me just do it, let's just go, I can do anything. The reality is, yes, you can do anything, but then there's life outside. Like the world hits. Like I can create this thing, but then if the world is saying to me, actually, we don't want to buy what you're selling, I need to figure that one out. So yeah, it's been an interesting one, but it's been a good, really, now I'm in such a great place, great, thriving, healthy business. And as you've alluded to earlier, I've sent lots of clients your way. So in terms of PR, I'm doing quite well.
Okay. You know what, Ronke? I love the fact that you talk about the journey, and I think there is going to be a need for a workshop or program where we get women that look like us and talk about the real talk to that journey. Because there's something about when you read personal development, and trust me, I'm in the personal development industry, and like, yes, they tell you the story, I was living in my garage, and then all of a sudden now I'm worth 2.2 million. They don't tell you that the garage was actually their parents' house, and it was comfortable, and it had light and cable and running water. It doesn't tell you that they had no bills to pay. It doesn't tell you they had somebody paying their broadband. They don't tell you none of that sizzle. They sell you you just do X, Y, Z, and then you can be it. Yeah. Just do it. Yeah. When you go down that road a couple of times, and you're like, I did everything you said. And
right I love this because I think this is the time now to have these honest conversations, because I'm an advocate for personal development, motivation. I've read the books, I've listened to the podcasts, I've watched the shows, I've watched the programs, listen to the CDs. Like I get it, but then it comes to a point where it's like, okay, what's the truth here? And then when the truth and reality really hits, you're like, okay, so the motivation it's like the water. Like I need it to quench my thirst, but then I need there's a lot of other things we need to make sure we stay standing, right? Like otherwise, if I just keep drinking water, there's other parts of my body that's not going to be fulfilled, right?
You're going to be hungry.
Can keep drinking the water. First, that motivational first, just keep drinking, yeah. But then, like you say, we're here still hungry because we're not being fed the truth. Wow, we got deep there. I like that. That's a tweetable.
We're not being fed the truth. And the thing is, and there are now people in the industry who are doing the work and actually sharing the realities of, okay, what it is like for somebody else.
Good.
And this is where, in this space, we need women like you, because you are in PR. And for the longest, when people think of PR, they think of Becky with the good hair and and Emma talking about, yeah, we'll just write your PR, we'll write your PR copy and we'll put it out. But if Emma doesn't understand why people like Oni Dudu are there, if people don't understand the stories of people like Medina King, why it's important to highlight the fact that she is first and only in her industry, why having people like, Yusuf, I cannot remember his last name off the top of my head, but why having a Black planner is important. If we don't understand these things, if Becky doesn't understand that, she cannot understand how to actually represent that client properly. And that actually comes to the question. Your very focus is on clients from the Black and mixed ethnic origin background. And it seems to be you were very particular. And most people go BME and things like that, or include everybody. Why did you say for you, and let's go back at an early age, this is when you started your business, that was your trend. And to use it I don't have a better word because it's not a trend for you, but it was your trend. Why did you say, put your stamp and go, that's where I'm going to be?
Yeah, I mean, and like you say, it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't a trend as such. It was for me, there's an intentionality which comes without even sometimes thinking or acknowledging, right? So when I started my business, it made sense for me to do the work that I do. And it's not even, I want to say serve my community, but it was natural to me to work within my community because I understood and that my community required that level of visibility, right? And that level of promotion and spotlighting where especially when I rebranded and I became more focused on PR and communications, when I became more focused on public relations, I recognized very quickly that, you know, not only am I a Black business owners and creatives being, you know, done a disservice in this country, they're constantly kind of undermined, there's overshadowed, like it's this weird thing of they exist, but they're not necessarily always given opportunities to speak up, or even just opportunities. It's not even about speaking up. Sometimes it's just about how do they communicate effectively to their audiences, right? Because that's another side of what I do.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of my clients come to me for media relations work, whereby we have to remember that in this country, as much as we don't like the word minority, we are still technically a minority. So all of the sectors, whether it's in PR or for example, media. So if, for example, I'm sending a client story to a media outlet, the majority of those newsrooms do not look like us. They don't look like you and I. Like, we are a minority in those newsrooms. So when they see our stories, if it doesn't connect with their biases or their stereotypes, more often than not, I'm not saying it's a hard and fast rule, but more often than not, they don't necessarily connect with it at all. So they'll overlook very valid quality stories, unless maybe we'll pick out some of those stories that they might think, oh, okay, that person's from this part of London, so maybe we should tell that story. So for me though, and actually being in an industry where there's not very many like me at all, and also not very many Black women who are independent consultants in PR. So even in the PR industry, there are Black women who exist in corporates and in agencies, but having my own actual standalone business that services Black entrepreneurs, specifically, or businesses that want to speak to Black audiences and Black communities. So I've had clients who aren't necessarily Black, but they're mindful that they want to make sure they communicate effectively to diaspora and African and Caribbean diasporan audiences. And so that's my target, because you know what, Lillian, and that's why I said, like, Black lives are not a trend, because I love us from day one. Like we've never, even growing up, and okay, so this is my part of my story, growing up in Hackney on an estate, we were never made to conform to this kind of respectability politics, in the sense of okay, yeah, they wanted us to work hard, and black excellence was a thing, but it wasn't this thing of hiding from our blackness. Like in my house growing up, my parents were radical, political, proudly Nigerian, proudly black. Specifically, like, they were very vocal on blackness. It wasn't this thing of being one way outside, inside, and one way another. My parents were, and it's interesting looking back at my childhood and thinking about, okay, how that influences how I operate. And I think because I've always been just proud of my, unashamedly, like unshakably proud of my blackness and my heritage, my Nigerianness, even despite the fact that I was born in this country and planted in this country, which, you know, this is my home. I'm still proud of who I am, even if this country isn't always necessarily a loving atmosphere for me. So there was an intentionality there, but it's also natural for me. Like, it was natural, and I want to prove, you know, the interesting thing, Lillian, is people will say, and people did say, and people probably still do say, we do ourselves a service by honouring this kind of our communities as being kind of specific. But I don't agree. Like, I feel like, and when I say honouring, like just being very much in alignment with our black communities, I think that's part of that respectability notion, that kind of notion of making sure we're for everybody and not for ourselves. And actually, there's nothing wrong with being for, and again, like I said, I'm not, obviously I can't be exclusively, I can't not take clients who aren't, that's not what my business is about. But it's a specificity to my business ethic, my work ethic, that serves the needs and requirements of black audiences and black entrepreneurs. And so, you know, if I can't do that, why should anybody, I don't feel like I should be ashamed or I should hide from that. And remember, given that, I'm going to give you one quick example. You know, in our countries of origin and continents of origin, there are a lot of, and I'm going to be specific in PR, there are a lot of major PR companies who do PR work for our leaders, for our corporations, and the majority of those PR companies still don't have anyone that looks like us. Like, if you look at PR companies that do work or do public affairs, public relations for our governments, a lot of those PR agencies are run by, you know, white, upper middle class individuals. There's a really good example, and I want your listeners to look it up. Bell Pottinger. Bell Pottinger is a really great example of a PR company that did some work in South Africa. And if they look it up, they're going to see what I mean. So,
but babes, just the name Bell Pottinger. I don't think you can get any more highfalutin than Bell Pottinger.
Well,
you probably could.
You see how privilege operates. Yeah, and you see how privilege operates. And there's this thing of certain industry heads can capitalize and commodify in our spaces. But if I unashamedly say, this is who I represent, suddenly it becomes political.
It becomes problematic. It becomes problematic. And I think this is what I want everyone to hear, because you are so elegant about it. But let's get down to the nitty gritty. Being that you are for your community doesn't mean you're against any other community. That's the finite line. And a lot of people, there's this whole conversation now, the Black Lives is trending, is, oh, we must create our community business and not deal with any other. I'm like, come now, that is short-sighted at best. And that's just limiting your potential at worst. So that's not what you are doing. You just want to make sure that your clients get heard and seen, and are not just seen, but actually respected. And I'll give the best example of what you were pointing to, where some stories are overlooked onto somebody else is doing it. And then you're like, I remember a few years ago, and I'm not going to name names, or, you know, you had a client who created plasters that were skin toned. We won't name names, skin toned. And this was a few years ago. And it kind of came out and then just died. And then recently, a corporation bought it out. It's like, yay, hallelujah! We have created plasters to match your skin tone. And I was like, I had to go back. I was like, I know Ronke had this. And I was like, and then you mentioned it online. I was like, okay, see, I wasn't imagining things.
But you see what happened. And this is interesting. Even now, Lillian, I've seen there's some lists in mainstream media where they're like, and I'm talking about big media platforms where they've done these lists of top 10 Black-owned businesses to follow. And I think and they've included a few of my former clients. And I'm thinking to myself, I pitched to 2 or 3 years ago. You could have just told that story organic. I just told the story. Like, we didn't have to wait for this moment. We could have just been in existence, and we do exist. So, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And, you know, like you say on Twitter, if you talk, they said you've talked. We follow. Listen, I try to avoid Twitter as much as possible because sometimes it's just so heavy. But okay. I come on Twitter for the plantain conversations and the rest of it. Because yesterday, this woman just compared Miami and Bournemouth.
Really, Tyler? Oh my goodness. Yeah, but you know, we've got, if your listeners aren't going to know what we're talking about, so that's okay.
Please go on to Twitter. You will find it. You will see my response. I only had one response.
But also, you touched on something that's really interesting. I need you, and you're getting better, but I need you to be just as vocal, if possible, on Twitter. I feel like I need more Black women in this space. We need our voices on that platform, or platforms like that. I know a lot of us kind of draw comfort. Like I really enjoy LinkedIn, for example, right? I know you're great on Facebook, but I always intentionally make sure I maintain visibility on Twitter, because Twitter is a good space for these conversations, and it allows us to be bold. So I'd love just to keep using it, keep using it, and keep tagging.
I keep coming, and I'll see some things. Sometimes I see it, I'm like, I see this is gonna go down this rabbit hole. We'll never recover. I'm like, I'm gonna just sit here, and then I share it. I share it to certain friends. I'm like, see our girl, see what she's saying now. Let's go there. So we digress. Please go listen. If you're not following her on Twitter, do, because aside from the social commentary, you actually share quite a lot, and you actually talk about what's really relevant from a place of from the human side of it. There's always the human cost of it, and I think that's the conversation that we need to be having. And speaking, since we're talking about social media, there's this weird idea that PR and social media are sometimes interchangeable, and please help us out.
Yeah, I think social media has definitely changed the landscape. You know, PR is about the relationships between a brand entity and their audience and publics, right? And it's about that reputation, trust building, you know, the brand awareness. It really comes down to trust, and that's why PR works alongside marketing, advertising, right? Because you can advertise a product and like tell people buy, but actually it takes time for people to trust. So that's why you need to tell the stories of the brand, tell the stories of the founders. So people as human beings, we can start to think, okay, I can trust that brand and I can buy from. So even if you see something that serves your needs, you can buy immediately because it serves your need. But if it's something where, you know, a consumer brand where it's more of a lifestyle purchase, so a purchase where, okay, I want to buy this candle, but, you know, I've not really heard much about the safety of this candle or about the company, or, you know what I mean, the ethics of this company. So social media, in a sense, has changed how we view reputation, right? And we view PR and how we consume content, even news. So because it's so fast paced and it really depends on the platform, what we find is certain people kind of overlook one for the other. Yeah. So you've got to make sure you have both and they coincide and there's an integrated approach. Because if you don't have an integrated approach, so for example, we've seen it and we see it every day. You'll have a big brand that assumes because it's big, it's safe, and then it will go viral on social media, and customers will be literally, not just customers, but you know, the world will be like, what's going on? Why are you doing this way? Then news outlets will start reporting on this thing that was trending on social media, and then it starts to damage our response, our trust, our reputation with that brand. So you've got to make sure you have both. You can't, for me, you can't have one without the other. You've got to understand why PR is PR. You've got to understand why social media works and why it matters and how it works. And I think some brands and entrepreneurs still have some way to go in terms of learning that.
Yeah, and that's key, because you talk about the trust, you talk about building that connection and telling that story. And we've seen presidents tweet fighting. We've seen influence oversharing. How do we gain that visibility? Because social media is noisy.
Yeah.
How do we gain visibility without feeling like we're pimping our underwear, literally, on it to kind of be seen?
That's a great question. And I've been having this conversation with a few clients recently. I think it's about knowing what your intention is, knowing your audience. I think standing in your purpose with that. I think once you start to understand and you pay attention to your audience and create engaged and engaging content, I think it's a lot easier than we give it credit for. But you just got to do the work. I think there's easy, in life, Lillian, there's easy wins, right? There's easy wins, low-hanging fruit. We see that across a multitude of spaces in our lives. Like, you can have, let's use an analogy of, you can have a phenomenal relationship, or you can have an easy, like a relationship that's just because you've got a partner, that's just how it is, right? But if you work, you're going to have a beautiful relationship. If you don't work, but you want to say, oh, I've got this relationship, then things start to fall awry. Now, it's the same thing in social media. You can do the work to build a brand and start to pay attention to what works, what doesn't work, what works for you, what works for your audience, and be strategic and intentional. Or you can just say, okay, I want to be on social media, be on everything. I'm going to do this, and it's a quick win, easy win. So that means because a B influencer is doing this, I'm going to do this. It doesn't matter if it works for me, my spirit, or my people, like the people I'm speaking to, but because I'm getting the likes and the follows, that's what matters. You've got to think about the quality and the intention. I'm always over quality and intention over this kind of rush job of just, let me
throw everything.
Yeah, and overexposure. I always say this. There is such a thing as overexposure. Overexposure can lead people to you. So it's a little bit of that, the effect of like tempting people like a magnet, because people are naturally nosy, but overexposure can also break you when you go over. Do you know what I mean? If you do too much, so you've got to be mindful of that. You've got to be really careful of that.
And you talk about overexposure and you talk about the mindfulness. It sometimes it feels like people are just flinging it out. Let's see what sticks. And then you're like, no. And okay, so we know people have missteps. We have Pretty Little Things recently with their, only God knows what that was. And I so love that particular influencer that called them out at 2 a.m. in the morning. And she's like, no, this is not what you do. You have brands who, for sake of a better word, were almost godlike in their content and how they were perceived and loved. And I'm not going to call names, Afro Nation. And they have now, because of COVID and the impact of COVID, had series of errors. How would you, looking at all of those brands who have misstepped during this COVID period, how would you say, if you were handling their comms and PR, want them to rebuild that trust?
Really great question. I think that example, so the example specifically of the music festival, which we shall not name, the music festival that was really popular. So the thing about that is there was an interconnectedness with the personal brand of the founder and the festival. People love the festival. People love the fact that it appeared to be Black owned and Black founded. And they liked the founder's story. And they wrote that, right? And I think a lot of people were really on it and really like, oh my God, this is amazing. And the actual festival itself delivered. It was phenomenally executed from what I saw. People really enjoyed it. The founder enjoyed the publicity. He enjoyed the press. He was really, I think it really got him a new level of exposure in the sense of media profiling. What happened though was when the pandemic hit and there was a lot of uncertainty, was this unwillingness to even just address that, okay, this is what we're looking at and this is what might happen. It took them a while. It took them a while to address what was happening in a way that their audience could respond to well and could understand. I'm not saying don't take your time in crisis. You do sometimes. Sometimes it's better to wait. Just make sure you put all the information before you respond. Otherwise, you'll just react to the action, and that's not always a good thing. But their communication was slow. It was a little bit confusing, disjointed, and it felt at times like they weren't reading the room. There was a few things that they were putting out, like videos, which just felt like your customers are asking you relevant and reasonable questions, you're not responding. So you can't now get all this media exposure, get all this social media exposure as well, and following. And then when things start to go wrong, you ignore or you overlook. And then the founder started to take it very personally. Like the individual in question started blocking people allegedly and saying some really weird things about his customers online. And it's like, no, remove yourself from this. You are supposed to be serving your customers. It's not the other way around. They're not serving your ego. And people forget that sometimes. So I think in terms of communications, what he should have done and what the team should have done is just be clear, transparent, and also, communicate in a way that their audience could understand, and be responsive. And because other festivals, if we're being really, other festivals were not, they were also experiencing criticism, right? But they dealt with it, in a reasonable way. And it just felt like, after a while, it felt like, oh, are you honoring your customer? It didn't feel like they were honoring their customers. So that particular example is one of, look, we want you to win, but make sure that as you're winning, or even when you start to lose, you still handle your customers with care, communicate transparently. Once you put all the facts, don't try and kind of run your customers around in circles. Present them. And, use the platforms that they were used to using those platforms. So I was a bit confused as to why suddenly there's a problem when customers were using the very same platforms to reach out to their brands to ask questions. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. I think I saw there was one TikTok video that was created, and I thought was the best kind of response to the whole scenario. I don't know if you saw the two girls who were all dressed up, ready to go, when they're like shocked with, and then when they go, and then the girl took her wig off, and she's her friend is holding her back. I'm thinking that was just hilarious.
Yeah, I saw it, and it's interesting that your reputation, your brand can become like a meme in a matter of moments if you don't handle crisis effectively. You can just become almost like a joke, which is a shame, but it happens.
And it is. It's really shame. It's really sad. And we're talking about social media. We're talking about how that now intersperses with PR. I've had a question come in, and one of the questions that I had for you was, what has been your most enjoyable Twitter item during this COVID period?
Oh, my most enjoyable. Wow, in the midst of all of this, I'm trying to think. Do you know what was my most enjoyable? Which is actually one of those Twitter trends that was, I think it came from something else, but it was a don't rush challenge. And this, I think it was at the start of the pandemic, right? And what I liked about that was and what it showed me is how people are not only creative, but how you're able to create this content that entertains us. Like we no longer have to rely on a traditional means of media or communications. Now, a group of friends in their own living rooms or bathrooms can individually film something, put it together, and just share it on Twitter or Instagram or wherever they're sharing it, and it can entertain us. And you know what I liked about it, Lillian? It also served as a lesson and a message for corporates, business owners, entrepreneurs, to be a little bit more daring and flexible and a little bit more open to new, fresh ideas. Because just watching that Don't Rush Challenge showed me there's some amazing minds when it comes to content creation. There's some amazing people who are creating these amazing trends and videos on Twitter or whatever platform, but corporates still stay stuck in their set way of doing things and their set way of communicating. And it kind of struck me that I loved that moment, but I also thought to myself, wow, like if a company, I don't think a company could have thought of anything better, actually. No. I'm trying to think if I've seen anything as good as that. So I enjoyed, that was a good Twitter moment in terms of entertainment.
And from it spawned children of its own, because now they have the wipe one where you wipe in the mirror. And then I'm like, that one is so good. You're like, you wipe and you see them I'm like, that's a skill. That's really an amazing skill. It is. It's really good. So we're talking branding, we're talking PR, we're talking about everything that's going on. And since we are talking about the times that we're in the COVID period, and then from in this COVID period, there's now the protests and the social equality movement that started from the George Floyd's death. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, because now everybody's like, yes, Black lives matter, Black businesses matter. And I am just as guilty as everybody. Anybody that has a list that says Black owned businesses, I'm tagging everybody I know who has a Black owned business.
Mm-hmm.
But in this flurry of wanting to support, in this flurry of, yes, let's tag businesses, is it that we still have people who are reaching out and looking for people to work in our community, to work for free? How do we deal with that in a place that is not, we're not shutting people down, but we're being graceful, but saying, run me my money?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Lillian, I've always had the resource, I learned this lesson years ago, and this is why part of my journey and kind of becoming who I am now, it meant rebranding, redeveloping the resources I have for my business, the resources I offer. So I now have a really easy set list, not only of questions but links to send to anybody who I think could be a time waster or someone who's going to try and kind of take advantage. Because I really think that I've been blessed. The majority of my clients, when they come to me, they know exactly what they want. They've done their research. They've actually read my website. Like sometimes I'm like, people take 5 minutes and read my website. Like we wouldn't even have to have a conversation. But the majority of my clients read my website. But these kind of new prospects, some of them, because remember, bearing in mind that whilst I want to say that PR is necessary, which it is, it isn't on the top list of priorities for many business owners, right? If they need an accountant, for example, they're going to hire an accountant. If they need a web designer, they're going to hire a web designer, or at least pay for a template. If they need a lawyer for legal advice. So in terms of PR, it's about making sure people understand what it is and why they need it, and why it's a strategic management function. It's strategic. It's not just something to pull out of the air, right?
Yeah.
So I think re-educating people, or at least having resources that people can educate themselves with, have really helped, so I can sift through time wasters. And to be honest, I don't necessarily take things personally. I just do find that it can be a little bit exhausting, and it can be counterintuitive if we're saying support Black businesses, but then if individuals don't say, okay, I've got this I've marked out this amount of money, I've got this budget, I should say, and I want to use it for this activity. If you're not doing that, I just wonder why you would approach a service-based business. And I think, I need to have a conversation with my other colleagues in whatever industries they are. If it's a service-based industry issue as opposed to a product, like if I had a product to sell, I think people just, because people do want to buy Black. I do wonder if people would just buy it and not think. But I think service-based, perhaps you need to do a little bit more of a tango and a dance and kind of, woo people to make them understand, perhaps. I think that's what the problem is.
I think maybe, like you said, the research is needed, or to find out, because sometimes I find, or you have those that want to nickel and dime you. And I'm like, listen, you don't go to Tesco's and say, can I pay you in community dollars or community pound? Tesco's don't take community money. Neither does Eon or BT. You pay BT or you don't have light. It's really...
It's true though. It's as simple as that. It's really as simple as that. I do wonder sometimes, and I understand, I get it. So everybody's trying to, especially startups, everybody's trying to just, work on their hustle, work on their game, work on their business. We have to start from somewhere. But I personally don't feel comfortable. I would never feel comfortable approaching anybody if I didn't even have a set figure in mind, or the idea to want to put money into their business at all. Like, I feel like you should already have a set figure and say, okay, if I can't afford you now, I'll save for later. Or thank you for this information, I'll look for a more appropriate service. I understand times can be hard, but it's about, okay, think if you want, and I always say this, if you want your business to grow, you have to sow into others. Like, you can't expect your business to grow out of thin air. You have to sow. Like, my business has grown, I believe, because I sow into other business owners. When I need a service that's relevant to me, I will sow into other business owners, and I won't, I won't, even if we have to negotiate, I'm not going to disrespect or dishonor that business owner, because I know what the struggle is. I know what the challenges are. So I think that's a really important conversation.
And that's clear, because you just said something key. Negotiation is not the issue. You can go and negotiate, because you know what? You don't ask, you don't get. that's fine. But it's when you go in and go, I'm trying to get this for free, it's like, how would you feel if somebody did that to your business? You wouldn't want that. So if you want your business, then it's a reciprocal scenario you put into, and you get back in. And you also said something about people in startups. Now, there's something that I know about you. You are a keen mentor. You've mentored for Cherie Blair's program. You've mentored individuals for Islington in the business Islington business community. You've done a lot of mentoring, and so how has mentoring played a position in your life?
So I think it's really, really important. I think I probably need to take more my own advice and possibly seek some mentors for myself. But I always find that my mentors, the way I see mentors, I don't physically have to have a mentor who I speak to. There's people who I follow, and that's the beauty of technology, and books, who are actually my mentors, like spiritual mentors, like mentors from just education and spirit, like reading their resources. But mentoring in terms of me mentoring others as well is really important, because I just feel like it's a no-brainer wanting to see the best out of people, and also just wanting to guide people in the right direction. It's not about, like, it's never been about me as such. It's literally just been, this is what I've learned, these are my lessons, this is how I can direct you. What I want to steer into more, though, is now sponsorship. And sponsorship is where, you offer tangible opportunities, right? And I open actual doors. And there's things that I can do to, whether it's get a contract or get a job, there's things I can do to make it easier. That's another line that I think, especially for Black women, we need to talk about more. I think a lot of mentoring is there. I think mentoring works, it's great. It's not enough. There's got to be more to it than that. And I think sponsorship, the advisory role is another way, actually, of engaging and propelling us to new levels. Because sometimes, not always, but sometimes I think mentoring becomes almost like a parental kind of relationship sometimes. And I'm always mindful, like, even with my mentees, like, after a while they end up being my mentors. Like, I learn from my mentees. I'm like, oh yeah, well, okay, you don't need me. Like, I don't want you to rely on me, right? And so we need to make sure the mentoring relationship doesn't become too codependent at all. And you allow people to learn and grow, and then you can open up new opportunities and doors, tangible opportunities and doors for them, because we need that. We need, I think there's a lot of mentoring opportunities out there and programs, and I think we've got that now. We've figured out what that means. What's next?
You saw my hands go up in praise of hallelujah when you talked about sponsorship, because mentoring is necessary, because for a lot of us, it's the first place that we learn how to lead. We learn how to do what it is we're called to do. Is actually, for some of us, when we get into even our day jobs, is the first space that we learn how to be in those spaces. And we've seen recently, and thanks to social media and the uprising, what bad mentorships can do. And there's nothing better than the case with Misha B and her mentor. From you can see how that can be a destructive thing, but you can see that we are mentored, and mentoring is needed. But there's something so powerful about having an ally open doors for you that you cannot go into. And for me, whenever I think about sponsorship, I think about Hidden Figures. Do you remember the scene where Kevin Costner, they shut out what's her name's character, Taraji P. Henson's character? They shut her out of the room, and he yanks the door open and go, if she's not in the room, I'm not in the room. To me, that is the best analogy I can have for sponsorship, because it's not just this. He put himself on the line.
And we definitely need, I feel like we need more visual representations of us doing that with each other. I think we exist. I think black women are my love for black women is, I can't even measure it, because I genuinely believe that we are sort of just special. I can't even put it into words. We are something else. Like what I stand for black women in a way that I don't think is just, I love us so much. But I feel like even just visual representations of that, we need to make sure we keep doing that in any space we're in. And I say that to my friends with children. I say that with my friends just one-to-one, like with the conversation we're having right now. I say that wherever I am, I'm like, wherever we plant ourselves, wherever we are in, wherever we land, we make sure that it's not enough to talk. We have to walk. We have to remember that even though we might not have the capacity to support in terms of mentoring, make sure you're paying attention to the people in your network. So when an opportunity arises, you can bring them in. And you bring them in and they're paid their worth and they see their value. Like, we have to make sure we do that, because I think that's what's been missing in this whole trajectory of, mentoring and motivation, and kind of going full circle to our conversation about personal development. Okay, now, we've done the work. We're great. We've been told and sometimes misled that we have to work twice as hard, which is exhausting. I wonder about the impact of, in black communities, on black communities, of working twice as hard in black excellence. We do all of the work. We know what we need to do. We have, the certificates. We're so educated. We don't have certificates. Hello, it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
Exactly.
We don't have certificates. Whichever room or space we land in or find ourselves in, help each other and make sure we switch each other on and make sure we're there and we turn up for each other. We remember each other. That's it. That's all. That's it.
That is actually powerful, because for me, like I said, I'm in the coaching space. I'm in the training space. There's nothing I like when I'm training and I see women or men that look like me and I'm delivering training. I'm like, I want to make sure that before they leave that day, that training, before they leave me, they walk out feeling that they got what they needed to get to their next level. For me, it feels a part of me. And when we're talking about that scenario with bad mentors, with that young artist, Misha B, Kelly Rowland, I cannot tell you how much I love Kelly Rowland.
Yeah,
because all her media she's media trained. She got the smile. She's always, she's absolutely perfect. Kelly's face was when she realized what Kelly's face was like, and she came for them. She came for them collectively.
Yeah, and rightfully so. We need that. We need each other. We lift each other up. We need each other in these spaces. But we also need to, you know what, Lillian, there's a lot of work that needs to be done so that we know that we can be authentic in our blackness.
Yeah.
Because I think often we enter these spaces, especially, I'm going to speak from, business and corporate world. We feel like sometimes we have to uphold the very systems or status quo structures that are keeping us down. So we buy into some of the false narratives, and we buy into that respectability, and you've just got to, present yourself a certain way. We don't allow ourselves to be authentic, and that's because those spaces are not designed. Remember, those spaces are not designed. They were not designed for us or designed to make us comfortable at all. And so just turning up and having somebody who looks like us, who says, actually, yeah, I see you. Like the example you've given with Kelly, I'm going to ride for you. I'm going to speak up for you. I'm going to, argue on your behalf. Even when, because I remember that clip you mentioned, even though Misha B she couldn't say anything.
She couldn't speak for herself.
Yeah. There's that visceral tactic of silencing us. So she is black women specifically, and then it almost feels like that's why I say I love black women. And that's not to say I want black women to be our labor. Like, I'm not trying to say we have to rely on black women to be strong or always be the ones, because we also need tender love and care, and we also deserve to say, you know what, I'm tired, I give up. We allow all of that. But we also sometimes need a black woman in the corner to say, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, I recognize your truth, and I'm gonna speak up when I can speak up when you've lost your voice. So yeah, that's a really good example, actually, Lillian. So yeah, thanks for that reminder. Good.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And while we're on it, there's now this whole conversation, and there's something for me, and I don't know where you stand in this, about now there's this whole, yes, we want to, it's a trending topic, Black Lives Matter, Black Business Matter. And there's this almost a section of people saying, okay, we don't need anybody else. And I am definitely a firm believer that we always need allies, and we do ourselves an injustice and disservice if we cut off other routes and other people who may not know how, but want to know how to support. And I think it's a dangerous road. I would love to know your viewpoint in this.
That's an interesting one. My thing with allies is I've often thought about this thing of allies. Like I get that they exist. What I've seen sometimes, allies tend to want to become your saviors, and allies tend to want to take up space where literally all they need to do is just leave us the space, right? I feel like sometimes, so there's a difference between having an ally who's intentional and knows and gets it, and then says, okay, I get my privilege, I understand my privilege, here you go. And then obviously, like you've described, saying, okay, I'm purposely not working with different groups of communities or populations. That doesn't make sense, actually. We live in a world where there's nothing we buy or eat, well, at least in this country, United Kingdom, that is not interconnected somehow.
Yeah.
So you can't, I don't know how it would be possible to be 100%, Black owned, as much as it would be a great ideology. There is no way you can be 100% Black owned and not have an interconnectedness with the greater, wider communities that we live amongst. But I understand the principle of supporting and putting our communities first and prioritizing our communities.
That's necessary.
That's necessary. I do believe, like you say, I think this ally thing, the jury's still out, Lillian, because sometimes allies, like I say, they try and take up space, and they become, this savior thing where it almost feels like we're now supposed to be grateful for giving us back the freedom that was always ours. Like, why should I be grateful for you doing what you're supposed to have done all along? And even if we say they didn't know, or it's unconscious bias, Lillian, sometimes I think they know, I think they know better, but they're just not doing the work to unravel it. You can't be around if you're not, unless you're intentionally ignoring a lot of things. You can't start to pay attention and think, yes, my Black co-worker, when they speak up in a meeting, gets silenced a lot, or like gets a lot of these comments. I think that's odd. If you ignore it, I'm telling you, there's something a bit off there. So yeah.
So no, I definitely agree that, and there is that. I think for those who want to become allies and those who want to support, they have to go on that journey for themselves and know what that looks like and how to do it in a way that, and it's asking the questions, what do you need? And not running in on the horse and the white knight kind of style. And so I guess it's going to be a balance, and I think we're going to come to a place where people are going to learn to do that balance. But I think people should not throw out the bathwater and the baby on this conversation till it can be had in a way that allows for fuller dialogue.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a lot of time, but I also think, Lillian, that we need to have uncomfortable, ugly, dirty conversations. I think the only way, and the reason why all of this is happening during 2020, during the pandemic, is because we're forced in lockdown, we're in quarantine. There's nothing else to distract us. We can't go anywhere. So I think the reactions from brands is because there's this kind of pressure of like, okay, we can't run away now. We can't hide. We're all forced onto our screens, and we're seeing and paying attention. So I think that's what it is. But I feel like we still, even in this country, there's a lot of English, and I'm sure your listeners from around the world, perhaps they don't always know, and I'm not trying to stereotype. I'm speaking from experience as I'm British born, so I know my people. I know the people of this country. There's this thing of not being direct enough. We do this thing of talking around.
Because we have to maintain the British sensibility, and one does not want to directly confront, because it gets a little uncomfortable, and we don't want to make Emma cry.
But comes from dirty, ugly, painful. Like some of these conversations can be really painful conversations. And the thing is, that gets to me, and this is why I've just taken a step back and I'm just observing, is I think a lot of the conversations are going to be quite safe. And then when it gets too much, people are going to get upset. People are going to get angry. People are going to cry, use their tears, weaponize their tears, as you stated. And when, you know, our communities have lived with the burden and strain of this all our lives. We're not even allowed, and I even use the word allowed in a way that, you know, we're not allowed to even express our anger, our tears, our fears in a way that's authentic. But yet, when we start to tell you, the world, you know, white populations, white communities across the world, across this country, this is what you keep doing, can you stop doing this? Then suddenly there's anger, there's tears, there's silencing. There's an immediate like, we've done this thing now, enough now, we've issued an apology, what more do you want from us? And it's like, there's work, Lillian, like you say, there is so much work to be done.
Oh yeah.
I almost feel like, to me, and this is why I love, you know, there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of books out there.
There's a lot.
Just do the work. It's got nothing, like, I almost feel like this is the problem. White supremacy, we're going to get deep and real now. White supremacy was not created by my people. So why should I now undertake the task, the
emotional labor to unpack it for you?
Emotional labor of dismantling. Yes, I am going to dismantle anti-blackness. I'm going to always dismantle and try and dismantle anything that is against my people and racism and all of that. But ultimately, it's the very people, even if they say, oh, it wasn't my fault, it was my ancestors. Look back at your ancestors and face your ancestors, because you're going to keep, the thing about it is, and this is where we talk about the spirit, we're going to keep having this conversation until you face your ancestors. Yeah. Because your ancestors might have created this structure and system. We're going to keep having this conversation until you face your ancestors and do what you need to do to dismantle white supremacy. It's not necessarily my job. It's your job in your white population, the populaces, white demographics that need to have these conversations and do that learning. And all I need to do is just keep reminding and just be like, we're still here. And I'm not going to shut up until, you know, my generation, my children's generation, my grandchildren's generation gets a better life. Like, that's literally, we're not going to shut up. So you do the work. And
and you know what, that's the power of it. And we don't, you know, and to every individual who is actually actively working to dismantle, there's so many Black women and men and from other ethnic minorities who were speaking up daily. They have my respect, but I have to step back and go, no, you have to do the work, because I cannot help you unpack this for you.
Right, exactly. We you know, and there's, you know, there's work we can do in our own communities as well. And we need to do a lot of work addressing, there's even, you know, addressing the legacy and the legacy footprint of white supremacy in our Black communities, anti-Blackness, colorism. There's a lot of work we need to do within our own communities, as well as dealing with the overarching structure.
Of course. We have our own house cleaning to do, as they will have their own house cleaning to do, and we'll come to a place.
But we're not going to keep quiet. Like, we're still going to stay, we're going to stay on their necks. Like, there's ways of staying on their necks that doesn't necessarily mean, like, there's people who are vocal and very active and very visible, and there's people who will be doing the work on the grassroots level, and there's people who will be just in their spaces, just doing little bits and pieces. Whatever it is you're doing, we stay on their necks. We keep reminding, we keep doing, you know, we keep doing what we need to do to make sure that bit by bit, brick by brick, we're dismantling this thing called white supremacy. And it's going to take a long time, but maybe not in my lifetime, but it will happen.
It will happen. It will happen. And, you know, so Ronke, I cannot thank you for coming back on the show. It's always a pleasure. And I'm so glad that I got you back on. So we've come to that space. We're going to do our So Loud moment of the week. What is your So Loud moment?
Oh no, you put me on this. Oh goodness, let me think. If you share yours first, I'll have a time to think of one.
Oh, I have to share mine. Oh, okay. So let me share mine. Mine will actually be, my So Loud moment for this week will actually have to be my 7 habits that robs us of our power book, that ebook that's coming out on the 21st of June. That has to be mine.
This is it. This is what I love it. Love it. I almost feel like we could end there. Okay, but let me say, my so loud moment is, do you know what, Ian? I'm going to just keep it 100. I'm going to say just having consistent quality business, clients, money coming in the bank, and invoices being paid on time and in full. Yes.
Awesome. I like it. I like it.
I can't take that for granted. Like I know it sounds like, oh, that's a bit boring, but honestly, every day that I'm still here, I give thanks. I'm grateful. For me, that's when I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm still here, I'm still going. So that's what it is.
Awesome. Ronke, thank you. I have just a couple more questions. A couple more. So one of the questions I have that was again passed on to me was about, there is this, and I'm not going to say where he's from. He's from one of these reality type TV shows, and he's always posting thirst trap pictures, and you were always commenting. Why?
No.
Yeah, I know he's from one of the islands. We'll just say one of the dating relationship islands.
Do you mean?
I think it's George.
Okay, reframe that question. Do you know who I actually say people should unfollow? Is that the person?
Well, I don't know if I think you just basically, you clap back at him because you're like, listen, all this man pecs every day is a bit much.
Yeah, the only person I can think of, because I can't think of the person I'd be doing that to at all. But there is one like influencer who I'm not a big fan of, who constantly, and he does post thirst trap, but I don't even comment on his stuff. I literally just say, just generally on my social media, can people stop following this person?
Yeah, that's basically, yeah.
He shares a lot of misinformation,
Mm-hmm.
but I think because he's relatively attractive, people find find him interesting. He shares a lot of dangerous misinformation.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of man TTs are on, confusing folks. So people see the pecs as like, yeah.
Yeah, but no, I'm trying to think. The only person I can think of, and I don't comment on people's pictures, like especially celebrities or influencers. The only person I can think of who I might even just hint at is like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and I might just be like, oh wow, but he's in a good way, like he's a
he's good. No, and I'm not saying it in totally a bad way. It was more like we see your thirst trapped in, we call it out and stop it.
No, because I'm all about freedom. I'm all about body positivity and freedom. So I'm trying to figure out who that could be. If it could be the person I'm thinking it is, then it's because of the misinformation.
Okay. So here's my last question. Who would you want to play you in the movie of your life?
Oh, again, now I feel like flipping the question back to you now. But okay, so no. Let me think. It's a really good question. The name is there, and I'm trying to. You'll know who she is. She's a British Nigerian actress, Christina. Oh my goodness.
Is she the one that recently played Harriet Tubman?
No, that's Cynthia.
Okay, that's Cynthia. Okay.
No, the one I'm thinking about. She was in Footballers' Wives years ago. She actually went back to Nollywood for a little period of time. Oh, okay. I need to Google her name. I forgot. I think it's Christina. Oh my goodness. And she now she's in America. Oh my gosh. I need to find her name because she's gorgeous. And she'd be the one. Who would play you? Who would play you?
Oh, that's a question. Let's see. Older me will have to be Oprah. I mean, come on now. Older me would be Oprah. Let's see. I don't know who will play younger me, but definitely, I think Taraji could play me. I think Taraji has the right vibe, and she's just really cute.
Yeah, I think for you, maybe Taraji. I feel like Regina Hall, one of the Reginas, or Viola Davis for you, maybe. Or who else? Who else is coming to mind? Yeah, I think Taraji would be good. Taraji's got that. Yeah, she's got that energy. Maybe it's Taraji. I've got the name now.
What's her name?
Caroline Chikezi.
Oh yeah, I know of her.
I think you call her Christina. Sorry, Caroline, if you listen to this, but Caroline Chikezi. Chikezi, is that how you say it?
Chikezi.
Yeah, she's gorgeous. Google her. She played me from the beginning to the end. It'd have to make her put like wrinkles on. She's gorgeous, and I love. Do you know what I like about her? As in kind of the final word, the word of the day in terms of her journey. Like, she's known when to rest, and she's known when to let go of the journey here and go somewhere else and she's not necessarily given up on her dream. She might have, you know, left this country, but she's found other opportunities. That's why I like Caroline. Like, even just to play me, it reflects just my journey. So for the word of this kind of theme of this topic is of this conversation is that journey. So having an actress who's lived, yeah, I like her, and she's she's understated. Unfortunately, I almost forgot her name, but she's beautiful. I love her.
I actually know her, and she plays Cyberwoman in Torchwood. She's an exceptional actress. So
UK. She tried a little bit in Nollywood, went to America. She found her dream. She kept on going, and she's just, that's how you do it. You live. You keep rebranding and rejuvenating. You don't have to stay stuck.
And that's the beauty of it. So, Ronke, thank you for being on this journey for us. Thank you for sharing with us. And I'm looking forward to the next part of your journey.
Thank you so much, Lily, and you too. Thank you. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Guys, it's a wrap. You know what to do. If you want to hear more about what Ronke Lawal does, and you're a founder, a business owner, or you're thinking about starting a business and you want to know how to get your PR right from the start, this is a woman that you need to speak to. You want to go over to Ariatu PR. The notes will have all her links. You can follow her at all her socials, which will be below, and you know what to do. Reach out, tell her you've listened to the show, let her know that you want to go on this journey and you want her to help guide you down the road so that you don't make the missteps other brands have made, and so that you can actually tell the story cohesively. But most importantly, discover about the woman and the work that she does, and discover about her social commentary, discover what she does with other brands as well, and also her dinner club where she shares and reviews food, because she's a foodie and a half. We didn't talk about her foodiness. And just in case you miss it, and verbally, let me just tell you where to find it. It's Ariatu PR. Ronke, so that people have it, where can they find you?
So all over social media, like you say, ariatupr.com, ariatupr.com, ronkelawal.com.
Okay, follow her. She's on Insta, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Follow. Connect with her. You need her in your business. That's all I'm going to say. So, folks, it's a wrap. Catch you next time. Bye.